Alright, so continuing our discussion about the circulatory system, let's now look into the human heart. Well, starting off with the heart, the cells of the heart, they are obtained from the mesodermal layer of the body during development. So that gives us our first point, which is the heart is a mesodermally derived organ. Alright, so that's that. Now, where is the heart located inside our body? Now, if we look at the specific location, then it is situated in the thoracic cavity, of course, but it is present in between the two lungs. And it is also slightly tilted towards the left. So it is present in between the two lungs and it is slightly tilted towards the left. Now, if we talk about the size of the heart would be of a particular someone would have his heart to be the size of his clenched fist. So if you make a fist, that would be the exact size of your heart, or approximately the exact size of your heart. Now, the heart, it is protected by a double-walled membranous bag. So, double-walled membrane, which is called the pericardium. It's called the pericardium. And this pericardium, to protect the heart, it has something called the pericardial fluid. This fluid prevents the heart from getting damaged by preventing friction with the other organs that are nearby, and especially the lungs. Now, if we look at the chambers of the heart, now human heart, in the previous videos we have talked about the human heart having, or the mammalian heart, they have 4 chambers. So 4 chambers, that is 2 atrium or 2 atria and 2 ventricles. This was the arrangement. Now the atrium, in this diagram, the atrium would be, this is the right atrium, this is the left atrium, this is the right ventricle, and this is the left ventricle. So these are the 4 chambers of the heart. The 2 atriums, that is the right and the left atrium, that is separated by an interatrial septum that is present in between the 2 atrium. So this little patch that you see in the diagram, this is the interatrial septum. Alright, now the interatrial septum, this is a thin septum, and we're going to talk about why it is thin. The interventricular septum that you can see over here, this is the interventricular septum. This is comparatively thick. Now, atrium, what it does, it pumps blood into the ventricles, whether it be the right atrium or the right atrium or the left atrium. So the blood comes from the atrium to the ventricles, and same case over here. So one side is the deoxygenated blood, that is the right side flows the deoxygenated blood, whereas the left side, it flows the oxygenated blood. But the blood always flows from atrium to the ventricles. And finally, from the ventricles, the blood goes to the rest of the body. I mean, if we're speaking about oxygenated blood, then that blood would go to the rest of the body. And if we're speaking about deoxygenated blood, then it is going to go to the lungs for getting the blood oxygenated. So the ventricle must have a much more pressure when it is pumping the blood. And that is why, to prevent the ventricles from getting damaged when it is, pressurizing the blood out of the heart, that is why it is having thick walls. Rather, when the atrium, it is pumping blood to the ventricle, it does not need that much of pressure. So that is why it is not having the thick walls of the septum. It is having a thin walled septum. So that is the reason. Now, speaking about the right atrium and the right ventricle, there is a flap or a valve that is present in between the atrium and the ventricle that separates those two chambers. So this flap or valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle, this is called the tricuspid valve. And similarly, for the left atrium and the left ventricle, we have the bicuspid valve. Okay, so now talking about the names, that is the tricuspid and the bicuspid. For the tricuspid valve, it is the septum has 3 flaps. That is why it is called tricuspid. And for the bicuspid valve, it is having 2 flaps. That is why it is bicuspid. And the bicuspid is also called the mitral valve. In the right atrium, the blood which comes, it comes through a vessel which is called the vena cava. This is the vena cava, and this is also the vena cava. Now, one of the vena cava is called the superior vena cava, and the other one is called the inferior vena cava. Now, the superior vena cava drains blood into the right atrium from the upper parts of the body, whereas the inferior vena cava drains blood into the right atrium from the lower parts of the body. So that is the difference. Now, deoxygenated blood comes in the right atrium, it goes into the right ventricle, and from there it goes to the lungs, and it goes out of the right ventricle through a vessel which is called, that is this vessel, which is called the pulmonary artery. Right? So this is all about the right side of the heart. Now, if we talk similarly about the left side of the heart, then oxygenated blood from the lungs come to the left side of the heart, or the left atrium, through the opening which is called the pulmonary veins. So if I draw it over here, this is the pulmonary veins. So the blood is oxygenated in the lungs and it comes to the heart through the pulmonary veins. And we are going to go into the details of the whole circulation, that is the whole double circulation, in another video. But in this video, just try to understand what are the different parts of the heart and what are the different vessels, what are the different things that are present in the heart. We are just talking about the anatomy. So don't worry about that. We are going to go into the details later. So the oxygenated blood comes from the lungs through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. Now from the left atrium, like I said, it is going to go to the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle, it is going out of the left ventricle, that it is the oxygenated blood is going out of the heart, and it goes to the rest of the body. That vessel that pumps it is called the aorta. So pulmonary veins is carrying the blood, oxygenated blood, into the heart, and aorta is taking the blood away from the heart. So these are all the different parts of the heart. And another thing that I want to tell you is that, like the bicuspid and the tricuspid valve, when the right ventricle and the left ventricle is pumping blood away from the heart, it is pumping blood to the pulmonary artery for the right ventricle, and over here it is pumping blood to the pulmonary artery, which is going to the lungs, and for the left ventricle it is pumping blood through the aorta, which is going to the rest of the body. There is a valve present over here and over here. So these valves are collectively, they are called the semilunar valves. So I'm going to write it over here. These are called semilunar valves. Right. So this was an overview of the different parts of the heart. And in the next one, we are going to look at the nodal musculature. Then we are going to look at the double circulation that is going on inside the body.